When was the first time that you felt fully embraced in a loving community? When you felt that you had found your beloved community? Thinking back to my own journey to Unitarian Universalism, one of the clearest moments in my memory of feeling loved into being by a community came from the first time I walked through the doors of a congregation as a teenager. In my transition from middle school to high school, I had begun a personal search and quest, asking myself what it is that I believed and how I wanted to live these values in the world around me. And after a run-in with several other religious and spiritual communities that just didn't quite seem to fit, most of these from my friends, I can still feel the warm wash of relief as I came in and sat down that first Sunday and simply just felt loved for who I was. In my experience as a teen, there were so many messages around who it is I was supposed to be and what it is I should aspire to become, and all of the other pieces that come with discovering more of myself as I reckoned with a world that seemed to want to just put me into all of these different little boxes. That day when I weaved through the aisles of folding chairs and felt the warm glow of smiling faces greet me, I'd say it was a life-saving moment for me. Without even really knowing me, and I not really knowing them, I had the most deep-seated feeling within me that I was finally home. That I didn't have to be anybody else or believe this or that in order to be worthy of love. At a time when I was wrestling with my own identity as a gay teen, wanting so desperately to find a place that would welcome me as I was, the congregation at Mission Peak UU in Fremont, California, became my spiritual home. The fear and anticipation that I felt with going to this community, whether they'd be warm or inviting enough, or whether I could really see myself fully being there, all of that seemed to just melt away with the simple and gentle warmth that they gave me. A true, unadulterated glimpse for me at what beloved community really feels like. To feel fully embraced in any moment, as if you've finally found your home and your people. Many of you might resonate with special moments like this. Perhaps UUCGT is a community that fully embraced you in all of who you are, where you felt those familiar waves of warmth and acceptance wash over you when you first entered the building or the sanctuary. And others of you might know this feeling elsewhere, in groups, meetings, or spaces where, with others, you've felt a real and present sense of radical acceptance. Where that inner voice that doubts if you fully belong finally starts to quiet down, and you are met with a pureness of love and community that exists beyond what words can capture, and even what beloved community as a phrase can fully capture. As we honor the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. this MLK Sunday, I invite you to hold this memory close to your heart this morning. Find the one piece from that moment, that one person, place, or thing that continues to travel with you today, when you think about what it feels like to be fully loved just as you are. One of Dr. King's visions that endures to this day is that of creating the beloved community, a term that we've talked about a few times here at UUCGT. You might have heard of it by now. In fact, some of you might even remember that one of my first sermons that I shared with you as a ministerial candidate was about beloved community and how I understand this within Unitarian Universalism. In how I see and understand beloved community, we need look no further than those moments where we come face to face with it, even when we least expect it. Beloved community is more than this idealized vision of who we hope and aspire to become. It's a sustaining faith in what we know beyond just our own individual understanding. Beloved community is something that we catch glimpses of, something that is both present in the here and now, as well as on the horizon of our own knowing. It exists in imperfect spaces that are still yet becoming. We need not be in perfect community with one another in order to find these glimpses of beloved community. And in the most basic sense, beloved community is about belonging. It's a feeling about feeling loved, cherished, and cared for into being. It's found in knowing that you've finally found your place and your people. It involves working for the needs and rights of others, working to create more justice and equity for our neighbors, knowing that things as they are now just simply cannot continue. Beloved community is where the I meets the we, where we can shed the pieces that keep us from feeling separated from one another and can simply just be together. Now, beloved community is not a utopia. It isn't a vision that we can ever fully grasp or hold too tightly onto. Though if we look for it, we can find it still in those unimposing and humble spaces where love continues to reach out. Now, Dr. King's vision of beloved community is broader than any single congregation or country. For King, beloved community was a whole global vision. It's a world in which all people can share in the abundance of the earth, where poverty, homelessness, and hunger simply aren't allowed to persist. In this global community, racism, bigotry, prejudice in all of its forms are replaced with an all-inclusive spirit of siblinghood, one in which we resolve disagreements and disputes with peace and trust over fear and hatred. In Dr. King's own words, it's believing that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. When we talk about this global vision, it can seem like an improbable reality that is as far off as ever. With the world as it currently is, with the issues that we face time and time again, with greed, prejudice, and ignorance, beloved community can seem like something that really only ever exists in theory. That if perfection is our standard, that we will never fully get there with realizing beloved community in this world. Even if it seems improbable, this is why you pay me to be your minister, I'd argue that Unitarian Universalists live out a faith in such a world, that by our actions we can still believe that this world is salvageable, and in turn it is also worthy of saving. That as dismal as it seems, we can still create a global world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all people. This is the language that is found even within our own sixth principle. Though I want to push this even further, I believe that beloved community has become a guiding vision for Unitarian Universalists, one that both inspires us, but also sustains us on the long road ahead. Popularized by Dr. King's preaching in the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, I believe that beloved community is now at the forefront of our conscience as to who we understand ourselves to be, both religiously and spiritually, as Unitarian Universalists. And I believe that beloved community and the glimpses that we get at this better world to come are what unites us as people, not a set of creed or doctrines. Instead, we know beloved community because we ourselves have tasted of it first. And though this journey is long, we know that we travel this path not alone. That there are others who we join with who also believe that we can change and transform this hurting and broken world for the better. In our wider faith, there is much discussion and debate over the possible addition of an eighth principle to our list of 7 principles as Unitarian Universalists. Some of you might already be following this conversation across our communities and in our wider tradition. While our present 7 principles are rich in their depth and the values that we share together, I want us to consider why we might affirm this 8th principle both as a congregation and as a faith. The 7 principles themselves, though as beloved and cherished as they are not an untouchable, unchanging creed for Unitarian Universalists. Ours is a faith in which we are called to heed the wise wisdom of counsel and conscience, where we lift up our questions and consider how things might still yet be different. And believe me, I know that this is a sensitive subject for some of us who have grown to love and cherish the principles that are just as they are. I want us to open our minds and hearts to consider what affirming this eighth principle might mean for our beloved community here at UUCGT. Not that we would adopt this overnight, but that we might start a wider discussion about why this new principle matters. The language of the eighth principle names a journey toward spiritual wholeness through creating together a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. This is the vision that Dr. King brought to our attention for the world that could be around us. Though more importantly, the principle names as well that we must also be accountable to this vision, that our actions must also be in service of dismantling racism and all other oppressions. It names that in order to realize beloved community, that we need to steadily and accountably work toward this vision with work both inside ourselves and in the society around us. The eighth principle in its entirety is an affirmation that we, as the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. This is a bold and bright vision for us to join in. Indeed, as of January 11th of this year, 145 congregations across our association have decided for themselves to affirm the eighth principle as a core part of our faith. It's a naming for us that there is still a lot of work for us to do in order to become the people we know and hope that we can be. And though I don't speak for the congregation, as your minister, I wholeheartedly believe in this prophetic vision. I believe that we, as both a congregation and a movement, need to embrace this vision if our religion is still to be relevant in this society and world that we live in today. We need a clear and articulated affirmation that our faith is accountably working on widening its welcome. We need a religion that can clearly say that in our world now, that racism, oppression, bigotry, and hatred do not have the final word over unconditional love and truth. And today, people are looking for a faith that is attuned to the issues that are facing our world. They are looking for a beloved community to call their own, a community that aspires to welcome the outcast, to heal the brokenhearted, and to create real change in a world that is already so wounded and hurting. It's a faith that believes in the power of we to create sustained change, that we can't count on guarantees from a supernatural being or anyone other than our fellow humans to do the actual work of bending the arc toward justice of the universe. The eighth principle is one step in articulating what it is that we hold central and sacred as a faith. That beloved community is a vision of what is both here now and what is also still on the horizon of what could be. I want to remind you of that earlier moment or feeling that I had you hold on your heart, a moment where you felt fully loved and accepted for who you are, where you found that your beloved community was there for you. These touchstones and tastes of beloved community can be what unite our vision as Unitarian Universalists for a more inclusive, multicultural, and anti-racist Unitarian Universalism. We know that while we ourselves have found a home here, that there are others who still have yet to find their place in our sanctuary, at our table. And whether we intend to, Unitarian Universalism remains a predominantly white and affluent faith, a world and a community that doesn't reflect the diverse world and hope that we seek to create together. If we are really going to get behind Dr. King's vision of a global, beloved community, we are going to need to start locally with ourselves first. And should we choose, we can affirm this eighth principle that centers this vision of what it is that we are working toward as Unitarian Universalists, the world that we still believe is possible to create together. From our reading this morning, the report from the UUA's Commission on Institutional Change titled "Widening the Circle of Concern," we hear that the idea that you can believe anything you want and be a Unitarian Universalist is not valid. We have a theological container within which we can hold a wide range of beliefs about God, about how to practice one's faith, and about how to live. Because we live at the intersection of multiple traditions, defining this container is essential. Beloved community is perhaps one of these defining containers as to who we are and what we actually believe as a people. Though we can't create beloved community simply on our own either. Beloved community is a vision that requires each of us in order to fully sustain it. In Betsy's Time for All Ages, we learned that justice and change are not the actions of just one leader. Instead, they are the actions of all of us. We are at an exciting and important junction point for our faith. We are given a real opportunity to name who it is that we are as Unitarian Universalists in this broader vision, and I believe that UUCGT is ready to embrace this vision, that if we as a congregation are serious about widening our welcome and deepening our inclusion, we can take a real step in affirming this vision and bring a faith that is so desperately needed for those who still yet need to hear about us. So, dear ones, will you go with me there, to that beloved community that we still might create together? To close, may you feel held in this sense of a love greater than yourself, the warmth of a community that knows and loves you just as you are. May you be courageous in not losing heart with all the ways that this world is so deeply hurting. When you think about beloved community, may you be reminded about what it is that you hold and what also holds you close. May you be inspired to bring this love and vision to others who so greatly need to hear that they are both loved and also worthy of love. And above all, may you know the blessings of this greater love all the days of your life. May it be so, and amen.